Zara shrieked as the Sci-Father's poison barb sank into her flesh, and the predator started to drag its prey into the tangled undergrowth of bioluminescent vines. With 6 muscular legs, armed with serrated claws grappling her thrashing body, escape was impossible. Her desperate cries echoed in the jungle. She was done for. Until the human showed up. Seconds from gruesome death, she caught a glimpse of the strange alien creature barreling towards her like a charging bull. He was encased in some kind of flexible ebony armor, wielding a humming energy blade that sliced through the Sci-Father's carapace like it was made of wet parchment. With brutal efficiency, the human hacked the predator apart, neon blood spraying his armor as he dismembered the beast. Zara gaped at her savior, awestruck and terrified. Who was this alien warrior? Carl stood over the twitching remains of the Sci-Father, breathing heavily. His own blood dripped from a gash on his forehead, a memento from the crash landing on Akamar Prime minutes ago. Glancing at the communications array strapped to his forearm, he saw only static. The rest of his human exploration team were lost in space. He was utterly alone on this hostile planet, surrounded by hungry creatures and venomous plants. If he wanted to survive, he had to keep moving. Nodding curtly to the stunned Akamarian female, Carl turned and limped into the dense jungle, ignoring her cries for him to wait. He had to find shelter, gather resources, and figure out a way to repair the scattered wreckage of his ship. But on an alien world, where even the trees wanted to eat you, that would be no small feat. One wrong move in this unforgiving place, and humanity's first bold step beyond the stars would become its last. Carl glanced back at Zara, who was struggling to keep up with his brisk pace. The poison from the Sci-Father's barbs had weakened her considerably. He slowed his stride and offered her his arm for support. She hesitated for a moment before accepting, leaning heavily against him as they trudged through the dense undergrowth. As they approached the village, Carl could sense the tension in the air. Dozens of Akamarians emerged from their huts, their eyes wide with fear and curiosity at the sight of the strange alien in their midst. Some of the younger ones scampered forward, chattering excitedly, only to be pulled back by their elders. An ancient Akamarian with a gnarled staff stepped forward, his eyes narrowed in suspicion. "Who are you, outsider, and why have you trespassed on our sacred lands?" he demanded. Carl held up his hands in a gesture of peace. "My name is Carl, I mean you no harm. My ship crashed in the jungle and I am stranded here. I helped Zara when she was attacked by a Sci-Father." The elder's eyes widened in surprise. "You fought a Sci-Father and lived?" The elder studied him for a long moment, then turned to Zara. "Is this true, child?" Zara nodded weakly. "He saved my life, Zyla." Zyla turned back to Carl, his expression unreadable. "You have done us a great service, human, but you must understand that the Sci-Fathers are sacred to us. They are the guardians of the jungle, and to harm them is to upset the balance of our world." Carl's heart sank. He had only been trying to help, but it seemed he had unwittingly committed a grave offense. "I apologize for any disrespect I may have shown. It was not my intention." Zyla nodded slowly. "I can see that you are sincere, but you must also understand that we cannot simply allow an outsider to roam freely in our lands. If you wish to stay, you must agree to abide by our laws and customs." Carl hesitated for a moment, weighing his options. He had no idea how long it would take to repair his ship, or if it was even possible, but he knew he couldn't survive in the jungle alone. "I understand. I am willing to learn your ways and share my knowledge with you in exchange for your help." Zyla's expression softened slightly. "Very well. You may stay in the village under close supervision, but know that any further transgressions will not be tolerated." As Carl followed Zyla and Zara into the village, he couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. He was a stranger in a strange land, with no idea what challenges lay ahead, but he was determined to survive, no matter what it took. In the days that followed, Carl worked tirelessly to repair his ship, using whatever materials he could scavenge from the wreckage. The Akamarians watched him with a mixture of curiosity and wariness, but gradually began to warm to his presence. Zara, in particular, seemed fascinated by the human. She would often sit near him as he worked, asking questions about his world and his people. Carl found himself drawn to her as well, intrigued by her intelligence and her deep connection to the natural world. As he spent more time in the village, Carl began to learn more about Akamarian culture and society. He discovered that they were a deeply spiritual people, with a complex system of beliefs and rituals centered around the jungle and its creatures. He also learned that the Sci-Fathers were not simply mindless predators, but were revered as sacred guardians of the ecosystem. The Akamarians believed that the Sci-Fathers helped to maintain the delicate balance of life and death in the jungle, and that to harm them was to invite disaster. Carl couldn't help but feel a sense of guilt at his actions. He had only been trying to save Zara, but in doing so he may have upset the very fabric of their world. He resolved to be more careful in the future and to try to understand the Akamarians' ways before acting. As the days turned into weeks, Carl found himself growing more and more accustomed to life in the village. He had always been a loner, but something about the Akamarians' communal way of life appealed to him. He began to feel a sense of belonging, even as he worked tirelessly to find a way back home. But even as he grew closer to Zara and the other villagers, Carl knew that his time on Akamar Prime was limited. He was still an outsider, and there were some who would never fully accept him. And with each passing day, the chances of repairing his ship grew slimmer. He couldn't help but wonder what the future held for him, stranded on this alien world with no way back to his own. But one thing was certain: he would never stop fighting to survive, no matter what challenges lay ahead. As Carl grew more accustomed to life among the Akamarians, he started to pick up on subtle changes in the vibrant jungle that surrounded the village. The bioluminescent flora that once pulsed with a steady, ethereal glow now flickered erratically, as if struggling to maintain their luminescence. The usually lively chorus of alien wildlife seemed muted, with fewer creatures skittering through the undergrowth or calling out from the canopy. Troubled by these anomalies, Carl decided to investigate. He ventured deep into the jungle, his keen eyes scanning for any signs of disturbance. As he trekked further from the village, he stumbled upon a scene of devastation. Wide swaths of foliage had been hacked away, leaving behind jagged stumps oozing with sap. The soil was churned up and muddy, littered with the broken bodies of small creatures caught in the destruction. Carl's heart sank as he realized the extent of the damage. This was no natural occurrence. Someone was deliberately harvesting the jungle's resources without regard for the delicate balance of the ecosystem. He knew that the Akamarians relied on the jungle for their way of life, and this reckless exploitation threatened everything they held dear. Determined to get to the bottom of the mystery, Carl tracked the trail of destruction deeper into the jungle. As he pushed through the dense undergrowth, he heard the distant sound of voices and the whine of machinery. Creeping closer, he caught a glimpse of a group of Akamarians wielding strange, jagged tools as they tore into the flesh of a massive bioluminescent tree. These were no ordinary villagers. They were poachers, illegally harvesting the jungle's precious resources. Carl's mind raced as he tried to make sense of the situation. He knew he had to report his findings to Xylar and the village council, but he feared that the poachers were just the tip of the iceberg. There had to be someone powerful behind this operation, someone with the resources and influence to exploit the jungle on such a scale. With a heavy heart, Carl made his way back to the village, his thoughts consumed by the challenges that lay ahead. He knew that he couldn't stand idly by while the jungle and its inhabitants suffered. He had to find a way to stop the poachers and bring those responsible to justice, no matter the cost. As he entered the village, Carl was met by Zara, who could see the concern etched on his face. "What's wrong?" she asked, her voice laced with worry. Carl hesitated for a moment, unsure of how much to reveal, but he knew that he couldn't keep this discovery to himself. "I found something in the jungle," he said grimly. "Something that threatens the very heart of your world." Together they made their way to Xylar's hut, where the village council was already gathered. As Carl recounted his findings, he could see the shock and anger on the faces of the Akamarian elders. They listened intently as he described the trail of destruction and the poachers he had seen ravaging the jungle. When he finished, Xylar's expression was grave. "This is deeply troubling news," he said, his voice heavy with concern. "The jungle is the lifeblood of our people, and to see it so carelessly destroyed is a blow to us all." The other council members murmured their agreement, their faces etched with worry. Carl could sense the growing unease in the room, the fear that their way of life was under threat. "I believe that the poachers are working for someone powerful," Carl said, choosing his words carefully. "Someone with the resources and influence to exploit the jungle on a massive scale." Xylar nodded slowly, his eyes distant. "There is one who fits that description," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Zoltar, a corrupt official who has long sought to plunder the jungle's riches for his own gain. If he is behind this, then we are facing a grave threat indeed." Carl felt a surge of determination as he listened to Xylar's words. He knew that he couldn't stand by and watch as the jungle and its people suffered. He had to do something, even if it meant putting himself in danger. "I want to help," he said, his voice steady. "I may be an outsider, but I've come to care for your people and your world. Let me join the fight against Zoltar and his poachers. Let me help protect the jungle and all who depend on it." Zara stepped forward, her eyes blazing with determination. "I'm coming with you," she said, her voice brooking no argument. "This is my home, and I won't let anyone threaten it. Together we can stop Zoltar and his minions." Xylar looked at them both, his expression a mix of pride and concern. "You are brave, both of you," he said, "but the path ahead is fraught with danger. Zoltar is a powerful enemy, and he will stop at nothing to achieve his goals. Are you prepared to face the risks that lie ahead?" Carl and Zara exchanged a glance, their resolve unwavering. "We are," they said in unison. "For the sake of the jungle and all who call it home, we will do whatever it takes." Xylar nodded solemnly, his eyes shining with a fierce determination. "Then let us begin," he said, his voice ringing with purpose. "Let us take the fight to Zoltar and his poachers, and show them the true strength of our people. Together, we will protect the jungle and all that it holds dear." With the village council's blessing, Carl and Zara set out on their perilous mission to track down the poachers ravaging the bioluminescent jungle. They ventured deep into the heart of the alien wilderness, the towering trees pulsing with an eerie glow and the cries of strange creatures echoing in the distance. The terrain was treacherous, with tangled vines and jagged rocks threatening to trip them at every turn. Carl hacked through the undergrowth with his energy blade, while Zara used her knowledge of the jungle to guide them along the safest paths. As they trekked deeper into the jungle, the dangers multiplied. Venomous insects swarmed around them, their stingers leaving painful welts on exposed skin. Carnivorous plants lashed out with barbed tendrils, trying to ensnare them. And always, the menacing presence of the Sire Fathers lurked just out of sight, their predatory instincts drawing them to the intruders in their domain. But Carl and Zara made a formidable team, their skills complementing each other perfectly. Carl's quick reflexes and advanced technology allowed him to fend off the jungle's threats, while Zara's intimate knowledge of the ecosystem helped them avoid the worst dangers. As they relied on each other for survival, a bond began to form between the human and the Akamarian. They shared stories of their respective worlds, marveling at the differences and similarities between their cultures. One night, as they sat around a flickering campfire beneath a canopy of glowing leaves, Zara told Carl the legend of the heart of Akamar. "It is said that the heart is a source of immense power, a conduit for the life energy that flows through the jungle," she said, her voice hushed with reverence. "It is guarded by the mightiest of the Sire Fathers, a being of unimaginable strength and ferocity." Carl leaned forward, intrigued. "And this heart, it maintains the balance of the ecosystem?" Zara nodded. "According to the legend, yes. It is the key to the jungle's survival, the force that keeps everything in harmony." Carl frowned, his mind racing. If the heart was real and not just a myth, then it was possible the poachers were searching for it as well. The power it represented would be a tempting prize for someone like Zoltar. As they continued their journey, the evidence of the poachers' destruction became more and more apparent. Entire swaths of the jungle had been clear-cut, the once vibrant foliage reduced to stumps and ash. The bodies of small creatures littered the ground, caught in the indiscriminate devastation. Carl's jaw clenched with anger at the sight. He had seen the aftermath of corporate greed on Earth, the way entire ecosystems had been sacrificed on the altar of profit. He would not let the same thing happen here, on this alien world that had become so important to him. Zara touched his arm, her eyes filled with sorrow and determination. "We will stop them," she said firmly. "We will not let them destroy our home." Carl nodded, his resolve hardening. They would find the poachers and they would put an end to their rampage, no matter the cost. As they crested a hill, they saw it. An ancient stone temple, its walls covered in intricate carvings and pulsing with an otherworldly energy. Zara gasped, her eyes wide with wonder. "The Temple of the Heart," she breathed. "I thought it was only a legend." Carl stared at the structure, a sense of awe and trepidation washing over him. If the stories were true, then the secrets hidden within could change everything. They approached the temple cautiously, their senses on high alert for any sign of danger. The entrance was a gaping maw of darkness, the air heavy with the weight of centuries. As they stepped inside, the walls came alive with swirling patterns of bioluminescence, reacting to their presence. Zara ran her fingers over the carvings, her brow furrowed in concentration. "These symbols, they speak of the heart and its role in maintaining the balance of the jungle," she said, her voice echoing in the cavernous space. "But there is more. A warning of the consequences of upsetting that balance." Carl peered at the carvings, trying to make sense of the alien script. A sense of unease crept over him, a feeling that they were on the brink of something much larger than themselves. As they ventured deeper into the temple, the clues became more cryptic, hinting at a power that could either save or destroy the entire planet. The heart of Akamar, it seemed, was not just a legend, but a very real and very dangerous force. Carl and Zara exchanged a glance, the weight of their discovery hanging heavy in the air. They had set out to stop the poachers and save the jungle, but now they found themselves entangled in something far more complex and far-reaching. As they emerged from the temple, blinking in the sudden brightness of the jungle, they knew that their mission had taken on a new urgency. They had to find the heart before the poachers did, and they had to unravel the secrets of the temple before it was too late. The fate of an entire world hung in the balance, and the unlikely duo of a stranded human and a brave Akamarian held the key to its survival. Armed with their newfound knowledge of the heart of Akamar's true nature, Carl and Zara raced through the bioluminescent jungle with renewed urgency. The ancient temple's cryptic clues had revealed the heart's location, hidden deep within a labyrinthine cave system. They had to reach it before Zoltar and his poachers could harness its power for their own nefarious purposes. As they approached the entrance to the caves, a burst of energy sizzled past Carl's head, scorching the bark of a nearby tree. Zoltar and his heavily armed followers emerged from the shadows, their weapons trained on the human and Akamarian. "Did you really think you could stop me?" Zoltar sneered, his eyes glinting with malice. "The heart's power will be mine, and Akamar will bow to my will." Carl unslung his pulse rifle, the advanced human weapon humming with deadly potential. "Not on my watch," he growled, launching himself at the nearest poacher. The jungle erupted into chaos as the two sides clashed. Carl's superior technology evened the odds against the poachers' numbers, his pulse rifle cutting through their ranks with devastating precision. Zara fought alongside him, her Akamarian agility and knowledge of the terrain proving invaluable. In the midst of the battle, a stray energy blast struck the ground near Zara, sending her tumbling down a steep embankment. Carl called out to her, but his voice was lost in the din of combat. Zara rolled to a stop at the bottom of the ravine, dazed but unharmed. As she regained her bearings, A deep, rumbling growl froze her blood. She looked up to see the most massive Sci-Father she had ever encountered, its obsidian carapace glinting in the dim light. The creature reared up on its hind legs, ready to strike. In that moment of desperation, Zara remembered the teachings of her village elders, whispered stories of an ancient ritual used to commune with the jungle's guardians. With shaking hands, she traced the sacred symbols in the dirt, her voice rising in an otherworldly chant. To her amazement, the Sci-Father hesitated, its multifaceted eyes focusing on her with an almost human intelligence. Slowly it lowered itself back to the ground, its posture shifting from aggression to curiosity. As Zara continued the ritual, a sense of deep connection flowed between her and the creature. She could feel its ancient wisdom, its primal desire to protect the jungle and maintain the balance. In that moment, she knew that the Sci-Father was not their enemy, but a potential ally. Meanwhile, Karl faced off against Zoltar in a final showdown. The corrupt official was a formidable opponent, his mastery of Akamarian technology matching Karl's own skills. They traded blows across the jungle floor, neither giving an inch. In a desperate gambit, Karl feinted left, then pivoted right, catching Zoltar off guard. With a swift strike of his pulse rifle's stock, he sent the official crumpling to the ground, unconscious. Breathing heavily, Karl scanned the battlefield, realizing that Zara was nowhere to be seen. Panic gripped his heart as he raced in the direction he had last seen her, heedless of the remaining poachers scattered throughout the jungle. As he reached the edge of the ravine, he skidded to a halt, his jaw dropping in disbelief. There at the bottom of the embankment stood Zara, her hand resting gently on the carapace of the most enormous Sci-Father he had ever seen. The creature seemed to be communicating with her, its low rumbles and chittering sounds almost musical in nature. Karl approached cautiously, his weapon lowered. As he drew near, the Sci-Father turned its gaze upon him, its eyes glinting with an almost human intelligence. For a moment, Karl tensed, ready for an attack, but the creature merely inclined its head, as if in acknowledgement of his presence. Zara turned to Karl, her eyes shining with wonder. "It understands," she whispered. "The Sci-Father knows why we're here, and it wants to help us protect the heart." Together the unlikely trio ventured deeper into the caves, the Sci-Father guiding them through the twisting passages with uncanny precision. As they rounded a final bend, they found themselves standing before a shimmering orb of energy, pulsating with life and power. The heart of Akamar, the source of the jungle's vitality and the key to maintaining its delicate balance. Karl and Zara exchanged a glance, both awed by the sight before them. They had fought so hard and sacrificed so much to reach this moment, and now the fate of an entire world rested in their hands. As they approached the heart, the Sci-Father bowed its head as if in reverence. It understood the importance of the moment, the weight of the responsibility that now fell upon the shoulders of the human and Akamarian who had risked everything to protect this sacred place. As Karl and Zara stood before the shimmering heart of Akamar, a wave of energy washed over them. The orb pulsed with an ethereal glow, its light casting dancing shadows on the cave walls. Suddenly, a voice echoed in their minds, a presence that was both ancient and powerful. "Greetings, Karl and Zara," the heart spoke telepathically, its voice resonating with wisdom. "I have been waiting for you." Karl and Zara exchanged a glance, their eyes wide with awe. They had expected the heart to be a source of great power, but they had never imagined it would be a sentient being. "You have proven yourselves worthy," the heart continued, "through your bravery, your compassion, and your unwavering commitment to protecting the delicate balance of Akamar. It is to you that I entrust my power." As the heart spoke, tendrils of energy began to flow from the orb, enveloping Karl and Zara in a cocoon of light. They felt a surge of power coursing through their veins, a connection to the very life force of the planet itself. Karl and Zara nodded solemnly, the weight of their newfound responsibility settling upon their shoulders. They knew that the task ahead would not be easy, but with the heart's power flowing through them, they felt ready to face any challenge. As the light faded, Carl and Zara found themselves changed, their senses heightened and their bodies thrumming with energy. They could feel the life force of the jungle, the intricate web of connections that bound all living things together. With a final nod of respect to the heart, they turned and made their way back through the winding caves, the Sire-Father padding silently alongside them. As they emerged into the sunlight, they knew that their journey was far from over. They returned to the village, their minds still reeling from their encounter with the heart. But as they approached, they sensed that something was amiss. The air was thick with tension, and the villagers' faces were etched with worry. Zyla greeted them at the edge of the settlement, his expression grave. "Carl, Zara," he said, his voice heavy with concern, "we have received troubling news. Zoltar may have been defeated, but his allies have seized control of the Akamarian government. They plan to exploit our planet's resources on a scale we have never seen before." Carl's jaw clenched, anger flashing in his eyes. He had fought so hard to protect this world, and now it seemed that their efforts had been in vain. But Zara placed a calming hand on his arm, her gaze filled with determination. "We cannot let this happen," she said firmly. "We must rally the support of our people, unite the tribes, and stand against this threat." Carl nodded, his resolve hardening. They had been chosen by the heart for a reason, and they would not let Akamar fall to greed and corruption. As they stood before the village council, Carl and Zara shared their plan. They would journey across Akamar, visiting the remote villages and ancient sites, gathering allies and learning more about the planet's rich history and culture. They would build a coalition of those who still believed in the old ways, in the importance of balance and harmony. It would be a long and difficult road, but they knew that they had no choice. The fate of an entire world rested on their shoulders, and they would not let it fall. As the sun set over the village, casting the jungle in a soft, bioluminescent glow, Carl and Zara packed their supplies and prepared for the journey ahead. They knew that they would face many challenges, many dangers, but they also knew that they had each other and the power of the heart flowing through them. Together they set out into the unknown, ready to face whatever lay ahead. The future of Akamar was uncertain, but with Carl and Zara as its guardians, there was still hope. And as the heart had told them, hope was a powerful thing indeed. As Carl and Zara journeyed across the bioluminescent landscapes of Akamar, their bond deepened with each passing day. The long hours spent trekking through the dense jungle, relying on each other for survival, forged a connection that transcended the boundaries of their different worlds. One evening, as they sat around the campfire beneath a canopy of glowing leaves, Carl found himself lost in Zara's eyes, marveling at the way the flickering light danced across her alien features. In that moment, he realized that his feelings for her had grown beyond mere friendship. He reached out and took her hand, his heart racing as she intertwined her fingers with his. "Zara," he whispered, his voice heavy with emotion, "I never thought I could feel this way about someone from another world, but—" She silenced him with a gentle touch, her own eyes shining with a mix of joy and trepidation. "I know, Carl, I feel it too, but we both know that our path is not an easy one." Their tender moment was interrupted by the sound of approaching footsteps. Instinctively, Carl reached for his pulse rifle, ready to defend against any threat. But as the figures emerged from the shadows, he realized they were not poachers or hostile creatures, but a group of Akamarian rebels. The rebels, led by a charismatic figure named Raxon, had been fighting against Zoltar's allies, seeking to overthrow the corrupt government that sought to exploit Akamar's resources. They had heard of Carl and Zara's mission and wished to join forces. "Your bravery and dedication to our planet have inspired many," Raxon said, bowing his head in respect. "We would be honored to fight alongside you to save Akamar from those who would destroy it." Carl and Zara exchanged a glance, both realizing the significance of this moment. With the rebels' help, they stood a far greater chance of succeeding in their mission. Carl, with his advanced human military knowledge, offered to train the rebels in guerrilla warfare tactics, while Zara used her connection to the heart of Akamar to inspire and unite the different Akamarian tribes. Together they began to plan a daring assault on the capital city, determined to take back control of the government and put an end to the exploitation of Akamar's resources. But even as they threw themselves into their new alliance, Karl couldn't shake the feeling that their greatest challenge was yet to come. It was during a scouting mission to an ancient Akamarian temple that they discovered the prophecy. Etched into the stone walls in glowing symbols, the prophecy spoke of a great sacrifice required to truly save the planet. It stated that a chosen guardian must willingly give up their life to merge with the heart of Akamar, becoming one with the planet's life force and restoring balance to the ecosystem. As Zara traced her fingers over the symbols, her face paled with realization. She turned to Karl, her eyes filled with a mix of fear and resignation. "It's me," she whispered. "I am the chosen guardian." Karl felt his heart constrict, a cold dread settling in his chest. He couldn't bear the thought of losing Zara, not now, not after everything they had been through together. He shook his head vehemently, refusing to accept the prophecy's words. Zara took his face in her hands, her touch gentle but firm. "Karl, you know as well as I do that the fate of Akamar is more important than any one life. If this is what it takes to save my people, to save our world, then it is a price I am willing to pay." Karl felt torn, his heart raging against the very idea of Zara giving up her life, even for the greater good. He had lost so much already, the thought of losing her too was unbearable. But as he looked into her eyes, he saw the determination and strength that had drawn him to her in the first place. He knew deep down that she was right. The heart had chosen her for a reason, and he had to respect that, no matter how much it hurt. "I love you, Zara," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I want you to know that no matter what happens, no matter what choices we have to make." Zara smiled, a single tear rolling down her cheek. "I know, Karl, I love you too, and that love will give me the strength to do what must be done." With heavy hearts they rejoined the rebels, their newfound knowledge weighing on them like a physical burden. They threw themselves into the preparations for the assault on the capital, each moment tinged with a bittersweet urgency. They knew that their time together was limited, that the prophecy hung over them like a looming shadow. But even in the face of such a terrible choice, their love for each other and their dedication to the cause only grew stronger. They would face the coming storm together, no matter the cost. And if the price of Akamar's salvation was Zara's life, then they would bear that burden as one, knowing that their love would endure even beyond the boundaries of life and death. As the rebel forces gathered on the outskirts of the capital city, a shimmering figure materialized before Karl and Zara. It was the heart of Akamar, its ethereal form pulsing with a sense of urgency. "Guardians," the heart spoke, its voice echoing in their minds. "The actions of the corrupt government have damaged the planet's core beyond repair. A cataclysmic event is imminent. The only way to save Akamar is for the Chosen One to merge with me immediately." Karl's heart sank at the heart's words. He turned to Zara, desperation etched on his face. "There has to be another way. My human technology, maybe we can use it to stabilize the core, buy us more time." Zara placed a gentle hand on his cheek, her eyes filled with a sad resolve. "Karl, you know as well as I do that this is my destiny. The heart chose me for a reason, and I must fulfill my duty to my people." Tears streamed down Karl's face as he pulled Zara into a tight embrace. "I can't lose you, not now, not after everything we've been through." Zara held him close, her own tears mingling with his. "You have shown me the strength and courage of the human spirit, Karl. You have taught me what it means to love, truly and deeply. I need you to be that strength for my people now, to lead them into a brighter future." She pulled back, looking deep into his eyes. "Promise me that you will remember me as I was, not as what I must become. Promise me that you will fight for Akamar, for the life and beauty that we both hold dear." Karl nodded, his throat too tight to speak. He watched as Zara turned to bid farewell to her loved ones, her father Xylar and the other Akamarians who had become their allies in this fight. The sorrow and pride on their faces mirrored the conflicting emotions raging in Karl's heart. With a final embrace, Zara turned and walked towards the heart of Akamar, her step steady and purposeful. As she reached the shimmering orb, she looked back at Karl one last time, a small smile on her face. Then she stepped into the heart and was gone, enveloped in a blinding flash of light. Karl stood motionless, grief and determination warring within him. He knew that Zara's sacrifice would not be in vain, that he would honor her memory by fighting for the world she loved so dearly. A hand clasped his shoulder, startling him from his thoughts. It was Raxon, the rebel leader, his face grim with resolve. "It's time, Karl. The corrupt government's forces are mobilizing. We must strike now, while we have the chance." Karl nodded, pushing down his grief and focusing on the task at hand. He turned to the assembled rebel forces, his voice ringing out with a newfound strength. "Akamarians, friends, today we fight not just for our freedom, but for the very soul of our planet. Zara has given her life so that we may have a chance at a better future. Let us honor her sacrifice by putting an end to the corruption that plagues our world." A roar of approval went up from the gathered rebels, their weapons raised high in defiance. Karl took his place at the head of the army, Raxon by his side, and together they marched towards the capital city and the final battle that awaited them. The clash was brutal and chaotic, with the rebel forces facing off against the well-armed government troops. Karl's tactical expertise, honed through years of human military training, proved invaluable as he directed the rebel fighters in guerrilla-style strikes and ambushes. Raxon's deep knowledge of the city's layout allowed them to navigate the winding streets and alleyways, striking at the enemy's weak points with devastating precision. Despite their determination and skill, the rebels found themselves hard-pressed as the government forces brought their full might to bear. Laser fire lit up the night sky, while explosions rocked the city's foundations. Karl fought like a man possessed, his pulse rifle cutting down enemies left and right, his armor deflecting the worst of the incoming fire. Just as it seemed that the rebels might gain the upper hand, a massive earthquake struck the city, sending buildings crumbling and throwing both sides into disarray. Karl struggled to keep his footing as the ground heaved beneath him, his heart pounding with a sudden realization. This was no ordinary earthquake, but a sign of the impending catastrophe that the heart had warned them about. Even as he fought on, Karl knew that the fate of Akamar hung in the balance, and that Zara's sacrifice may have been their only hope of salvation. The ground heaved and shuddered beneath Karl's feet as the earthquake tore through the capital city. Buildings crumbled, debris raining down on the panicked rebels and government forces alike. But Karl barely noticed the chaos around him, his mind focused on one thing and one thing only, reaching Zara and the heart of Akamar. He sprinted through the ruined streets, dodging falling masonry and leaping over gaping chasms in the ground. Raxon and a handful of rebels followed close behind, their faces grim with determination. They had come too far to let anything stop them now. As they approached the site where the heart had been hidden, Karl's heart sank. The once lush jungle had been reduced to a barren wasteland, the bioluminescent plants withered and lifeless. And there, in the center of the devastation, lay Zara's still form, her body merged with the pulsing orb of the heart. Karl raced to her side, dropping to his knees beside her. He reached out with trembling hands, hoping against hope that he might feel some flicker of life still within her, but as his fingers brushed against her cool skin, he knew that she was gone. "Zara," he whispered, his voice cracking with grief. "I'm so sorry. I should have been here with you." The heart pulsed with a brilliant light, its energy washing over Karl like a warm embrace. And then he heard Zara's voice in his mind, as clear as if she were standing right beside him. "Do not grieve for me, my love," she said, her tone gentle and soothing. "My sacrifice has saved Akamar, but at a great cost. The planet's ecosystem has been forever altered, and our people must adapt to a new way of life." Karl bowed his head, tears streaming down his face. He knew that Zara was right, that her sacrifice had not been in vain, but the knowledge did little to ease the ache in his heart. I will honor your memory, he vowed, his voice rough with emotion. I will help your people rebuild their world and ensure that your sacrifice is never forgotten. In the days and weeks that followed, Karl worked tirelessly alongside Raxon and the other rebels to establish a new government for Akamar. They based their new society on the principles of equality, sustainability, and harmony with nature, just as Zara had always dreamed. It was not an easy task, and there were many challenges along the way, but Karl refused to give up, driven by his love for Zara and his determination to create a better future for her people. As the years passed, Karl became a respected leader among the Akamarians. He guided them through the difficult process of adapting to their new reality, helping them to find new ways to live in balance with the altered ecosystem. But even as he threw himself into his work, Karl never forgot his lost love. He would often visit the heart of Akamar, spending long hours in silent communion with Zara's spirit. In those moments, he could almost feel her presence beside him, giving him the strength to carry on. One day, as an old man, Karl was approached by a young Akamarian girl while he was visiting the heart. She had the same fiery red hair and piercing green eyes as Zara, and for a moment, Karl felt as if he was looking at a ghost. "Are you Karl?" the girl asked, her voice filled with awe. "The human who saved our world?" Karl smiled, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "I am," he said, "but I didn't do it alone. Your ancestor Zara was the true hero of Akamar." The girl's eyes widened. "You knew my ancestor?" she breathed. "The story of your love and sacrifice has become a legend among our people." Karl felt tears prickling at the corners of his eyes. In that moment, he realized that although he had lost Zara, their love had become something greater than either of them could have ever imagined. It had become a symbol of hope and unity for the Akamarian people. A shining example of what could be achieved when two beings from different worlds came together in love and understanding. He reached out and took the young girl's hand, his grip firm and reassuring. "Let me tell you the story," he said, his voice filled with emotion. "The story of a human who fell in love with an Akamarian, and the brave sacrifice that saved a world." And so, as the heart of Akamar pulsed with life and energy behind them, Karl began to share his tale, ensuring that the legend of his and Zara's love would live on for generations to come. As the words of his tale faded into the warm Akamarian air, Karl felt a sudden tremor beneath his feet. The ground shook with a violence he had not felt in years, not since the day Zara had sacrificed herself to save her world. Beside him, Zara's descendant stumbled, her eyes wide with fear. Karl's gaze snapped to the heart of Akamar, the once brilliant orb now pulsing with an ominous, sickly red light. Dread clawed at his chest as he raced towards it, his old bones protesting the sudden exertion. As he drew closer, he saw cracks spiderwebbing across the heart's surface, dark energy leaking from the fissures like blood from a wound. The heart's voice, once a soothing melody in his mind, now rasped and distorted. "Karl," it said, its words laced with pain. "Zara's sacrifice, it was not enough. The damage to the core, too severe. The heart is failing." Karl's mind raced, desperate to find a solution. He had spent years among the Akamarians, learning their ways, their technology. Surely there must be something he could do, some way to save the planet he had come to call home. He called upon all his knowledge, all his human ingenuity. He consulted with the greatest minds on Akamar, poring over ancient texts and cutting-edge research. He worked tirelessly, barely sleeping, barely eating, driven by a desperate need to save the world that had given him so much. But as the days turned into weeks and the weeks into months, Karl began to realize the terrible truth. The damage to Akamar's core was too great, the strain on the heart too much. There was only one way to save the planet, one final sacrifice that had to be made. With a heavy heart, Karl gathered the Akamarian people, the ones he had come to love and respect as his own. Tears streamed down his weathered face as he explained what had to be done, as he said his goodbyes to the world that had become his home. Zara's descendant, her eyes shining with unshed tears, stepped forward. "We will never forget what you have done for us, Karl," she said, her voice trembling. "You and Zara, your love, your sacrifice, it will be remembered for generations to come." As he closed his eyes, he felt Zara's presence, a warmth that suffused his entire being. He could almost hear her voice, whispering words of love and encouragement. With a final, shuddering breath, Carl let himself merge with the heart of Akamar. Pain, white-hot and searing, lanced through his body as his human essence combined with the remnants of Zara's spirit. He could feel the energy of the planet, the life force of every living thing on Akamar, flowing through him like a raging river. And then silence. The tremors stilled, the red light faded, and the heart of Akamar glowed with a steady, pulsing light, stronger and brighter than ever before. Carl's sacrifice had worked. Akamar was saved. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.